After being reborn, I encountered Song once again. He was lying at the end of the alley, covered in wounds and barely clinging to life. I knew that 3 years later, he would become the emperor who would rule the entire realm, and I would be his empress. Power and wealth would be within my grasp. But this time, I did not want to save him. Song, in this life, I do not wish to have any connection with you. Chapter 1. Yu Guangzhong. Song leaned against the wall, barely clinging to life. In my previous life, I was carrying a basket of steaming tofu when I found him. I took him home, spent everything I had to buy medicine for his injuries. And after half a year, he wanted to leave, but he left behind a jade pendant and a single sentence. I will return to marry you. I only saved him, I never expected any repayment. I was but a lowly woman, knowing I was unworthy of him, so I never dared to harbor such thoughts. But his words were etched into my heart, growing into feelings in my memories. On the night he left, bandits broke into my home and killed my parents. I hid in the narrow chimney and narrowly escaped. Reporting it to the authorities yielded no results, and the Great Zhou dynasty began to descend into chaos from that day onward. The next 3 years were even worse, with constant warfare and starvation everywhere. I drifted aimlessly like a lost soul. Later, I finally managed to track him down. I had thought he would be as overjoyed as I was. But to my surprise, he merely glanced at me indifferently and had someone send me to rest in the military tent. It would be a lie to say I wasn't disappointed, but I was so young and inexperienced that I had no strength to resist. Later, I became a cook in the army, which gave me the opportunity to cook for him and bring him midnight snacks. During those days, I always looked forward to bringing him a bowl of midnight snacks when he was in the camp, so that he could eat the food I had prepared in the quiet of the night, while I watched him with eyes full of admiration. It was both happiness and fulfillment. But one day, after the left army achieved a great victory and the entire army was drinking to celebrate, I was dragged into the military tent by his deputy commander, who was drunk and raped. I begged him for help, but he only held his wine cup, staring at me expressionlessly. The next morning, the deputy commander apologized to him, and he forgave him. I left the military camp with my broken body, wanting only to return to the capital and be buried beside my parents. It was only then that I realized that this encounter, from chance to fate, was all me acting and him watching. All he had given was that one sentence before he left: wait for me to return and marry you. It was just a sentence. Devoid of any feelings, I had overthought it. He remained the moon in the sky, while I was but a speck of dust. But on the day I was about to die, he found me. By then, he had already seized the throne and crowned himself emperor. In front of all the ministers, he declared that I had saved his life and promised to marry me. The emperor is truly a righteous ruler. Even a tofu seller's daughter, who once did him a small favor, is remembered, and he keeps his word, the ministers said. I once asked him, why didn't you save me that night? If you didn't care, why did you make me your empress? The red candles flickered, and his face grew colder in the dim light. You saved me, so I'm repaying your kindness. That's all. He removed his red robe and left. From then on, he came to my room every night, but he only sat there with his eyes closed for an hour before getting up and leaving. All the women in the world envied me. An ordinary woman. Yet because she had met the emperor, she enjoyed such glory. When I heard this, I just smiled. I had already understood Song purpose in making me his empress. He wanted fame. The fame of righteousness. The fame that would make all under heaven willingly follow and support him. A month later, when he was leaving, I called him back. I will help you one last time, but I hope you will truly repay me once. After I die, please bury me beside my parents. Song Shishing did not turn back. The next day, I summoned his former deputy general, now the general of the state, and drank 2 cups of poisoned tea with him, ending our lives together. I knew this man was arrogant and tyrannical, acting without restraint. Song Shishing had tolerated him for a long time, but as the newly crowned emperor, he couldn't kill his old ministers. So, I avenged myself and helped him. Before I died, I only thought about what my life would have been like if I had never met Song Shishing. Or, if I had been more confident, more powerful, what would my life have been like? But it doesn't matter now. My life has started over again. I've returned to the age of 15. And once again, in the bright spring sunlight, I see Song Shishing lying in the dim alley, on the brink of death. My footsteps hesitated for a moment. Then I quickly walked past. I did not look back. Nor did I hesitate. But my heart was torn apart with pain. He said he would marry me. Making me fall in love with him, he kept me by his side. Making me harbor fantasies, he forcibly made me his empress. Forcing me to cling to life. Then he ruthlessly extinguished all my hopes. That month, I often wondered what kind of existence I was in Song Shishing's eyes. A tool, perhaps? From the day I saved him, he might have already decided that if he ever became emperor, making a commoner like me his queen would earn him the praise of the entire realm. For him, as the new emperor, reputation was the foundation of his rule. My existence was nothing more than an insignificant stepping stone he had picked up along the way. In this life, I no longer wanted to have anything to do with him. The tofu stall was set up at the intersection, and neighbors flocked to buy. Before long, I packed up and went home. When I passed by that alley again, Song Shishing was already gone, leaving only the faint bloodstains on the ground. He must have been saved by his men. Qingya. My mother ran into the alley to meet me, and I hurried after her. Mother. I sold all the tofu. My mother didn't respond, just grabbed my hand and hurried home, then closed the door mysteriously. Qingya. I went to look for you earlier. I saw a young man injured and near death on the way, so I brought him back. She handed me a string of coins. Your father and I will take care of him. Go quickly and find a doctor. The burden on my shoulders slipped to the ground. My voice trembling, I asked my mother, was he saved from the alley of the Sea family? My mother nodded. What's wrong? Why do you look so pale? I hurriedly pushed open the bedroom door and saw Song Shishing lying on the bed, unconscious. How could this be? I stood by the bed, quietly studying Song Shishing's face. In my previous life, when I took care of him, I often looked at him like this, marveling at how someone could be so handsome in this world. Song Shishing was the most refined and handsome person I had ever seen in my narrow, impoverished life in my previous life. But after a lifetime, I realized that a person's appearance and inner self are not necessarily the same. My thoughts turned, and I whispered, "Throw him out." My parents were utterly shocked. My mother pressed her voice low. If we throw him out, he'll die. If we don't throw him out, we'll all die. My parents were clearly startled by my words. I turned to them and explained. There are already signs of chaos outside the capital. The world is about to descend into chaos. A man of unknown origin and severely injured like him will bring us nothing but trouble. Then we'll listen to our daughter, my father said. We worked together to pull Song Shishing to his feet, each grabbing an arm and dragging him toward the door. Just as we reached the doorway, Song Shishing suddenly opened his eyes. Our gazes locked, and in an instant, his eyes flashed with intense murderous intent. We brought you here by mistake, but now we don't want to save you. Suppressing my panic, I spoke each word clearly. Song Shishing's face turned ashen. I believed that if he weren't so weak at that moment, after being treated like a rag, he might have killed us all with a single stroke. I have money, Song Shirshing said, closing his eyes, unwilling to face the humiliating situation he was in. Once you're healed, I can give you more compensation. No, I said. I wanted money, but I wouldn't trade my family's lives for it. Seeing that I wouldn't budge, Song Shirshing stared intently at me. His elaborate robe swept the ground, leaving a clean trail. My mother rushed over and opened the side door. 3 people were about to lift him up and throw him out. Suddenly, 3 more men, equally covered in blood but holding long knives, appeared outside the door. One pointed his knife at us, while the other 2 nervously caught Song Shirshing, who was being held aloft by us. A moment later, Song Shirshing lay back on my family's bed, this time with 3 others present. The doctor arrived, left some medicine, and departed. After drinking the medicine, Song Shirshing handed me an ingot of gold and said in a cold voice, "We'll leave tomorrow. During that time, behave yourself." I took the gold and turned to leave, but paused and looked back at him. "Your life is worth more than a bar of gold." Song Shirshing froze for a moment, then smiled mockingly, as if to say, "A lowly woman like you only cares about money. Such a narrow-minded and shallow person. Is that enough?" Song Shirshing threw his money pouch at me. In front of him, I took all his money, threw the empty money bag back at him, and reminded him, "Remember to leave tomorrow." "Wait," Song Shirshing called out to me. I didn't turn around, but stopped to wait for him to speak. "We need to eat." I opened the door and went out to cook 4 bowls of noodles for them. As Song Shirshing ate, scenes from my previous life flashed before my eyes. In many nights of my previous life, I had brought him midnight snacks, and he had eaten them quietly, just like this. We didn't speak, but my heart was filled with dreams of the future. Suddenly, he looked at me and asked, "Is there an old man surnamed Lang around here?" My heart skipped a beat, because Song Shirshing had asked me the same question in my previous life. What had I said back then? I had said that I knew Mr. Lang, who often came to buy tofu from my family. The next day, Song Shirshing had asked me to take him to find Mr. Lang. Later, Lang Qinghe became his military advisor. But I never saw Mr. Lang while I was in the army. I did inquire about him and heard that he had been assisting Song Shirshing in leading the Right Army, working in tandem with Song Shirshing's Left Army. The 2 armies fought side by side, unstoppable in battle. I don't know. I shook my head without hesitation. The residents in this area come and go frequently, and I don't know many of them. Song Shirshing stared at my face, weighing something. After a moment, he suddenly said, "If I find out you're lying to me, I'll kill you." "Go ahead," I replied with a mocking smile. "Killing a few defenseless civilians, I'm sure you'll do a fine job." Song Shirshing snorted. "I didn't know there were women as heartless as you, who value money above everything else and are so cunning. We're all the same," I said, taking the bowl from in front of him and opening the door to leave. While washing the dishes, Song Shirshing stood at the window watching me. After finishing, I returned to my room and realized I was covered in a thin layer of sweat. If I can't change the outcome of my previous life, what's the point of living again? What should I do? Recalling my past life, I had to admit that Song Shirshing was a capable ruler. Ambitious and ruthless, he had severed all ties of love. When he raised his army, his legitimate older sister, Princess Liang, was 5 months pregnant, and hundreds of his distant relatives in the prince's mansion were completely unaware. When he besieged the capital, those relatives were taken hostage. Yet he could still sip tea leisurely as the heads of his loved ones rolled to the ground. After ascending the throne, though the former generals who had followed him and the founding ministers were all granted titles and promotions. Many became thorns in his side. The deputy general I poisoned was one of them. And so was Mr. Lang. On the day I was crowned empress, Mr. Lang and I had a brief encounter from afar. After that, Mr. Lang sought an audience with me several times, but Song Shishing always refused on his behalf. I wonder what became of Mr. Lang in my previous life. But I suppose he couldn't escape the fate of the cunning rabbit being killed and the loyal dog being cooked. The night was deep, and outside the courtyard, there were faint footsteps, and the tiles on the roof occasionally made a soft clattering sound. The light in Song Shishing's room went out. I did not sleep all night. When I got up early to grind beans, Song Shishing was already awake. He recovered faster than in my previous life. "What are you doing?" he asked me. "Grinding beans," I replied, scooping a bowl of cooked soy milk for him. "Drink it and let's set off." Song Shishing frowned. With a clang, his guard placed a knife against my neck. Song Shishing waved his hand, sat quietly to the side, and watched my family of 3 go about their tasks. "The gold you took from me is enough to sustain you for 10 years. Why do you still need to sell tofu?" he suddenly asked. "Just 10 years. I glanced at him. "The repayment for saving my life is a bit stingy, isn't it?" Song Shishing laughed. "To love money so openly. I've never seen such honesty before." He leaned back in his chair, quietly studying me. I didn't respond. Before leaving, I told my parents to go back inside, then shouldered my load and set off. Just as I finished setting up my stall, Song Shishing arrived. He helped me count the money and reminded a neighbor who had taken some tofu without paying. "It's only 2 coins. Though he smiled, there was an intimidating aura of authority about him. The neighbor dared not say a word, paid the money, and fled. "Don't be soft-hearted," he reminded me. "In business, you must be clear on the accounts." I turned to look at him. "All right. I won't be soft-hearted. Thank you for the advice." He looked at me thoughtfully. I packed up the stall. In my previous life, he had never helped me sell tofu, let alone spoken so many words to me. I thought that when he left, he probably hadn't even remembered my name. What had happened to change things? At lunchtime, his men tasted the food first before he picked up his chopsticks. "Take this." He placed a jade pendant on the table, tapping it with his slender fingers to emphasize his words. It was the jade pendant I knew so well. In my previous life, I had nearly starved to death but had never been able to bring myself to pawn it for money. A surge of emotion welled up inside me. Is this the extra money the young master added to save my life? "It's a token. If you sell it, I'll be angry." He stuffed the jade pendant into my hand. "As for saving my life, I'll repay you with my life." I clutched the jade pendant tightly, thinking of my previous life. When he left the jade pendant and said he would come back to marry me, he had never asked me if I was willing to accept his repayment, because he was giving it to me out of charity. Like a dog, before you throw it a bone, do you ask it if it prefers pork or chicken? No. It's just a dog. It's unnecessary. "I don't fancy you," I replied. He listened, his expression unchanged, then picked up his outer robe and stopped before me. "Trust me. No one in this world can offer you a better marriage. Power and wealth, whatever you desire, you shall have." He spoke slowly and calmly, as if he were certain I wouldn't object, that I would submit, that I would fall in love with him, just like in my previous life, waiting for him, loving him, following him, obeying him, until death. I overturned the table, crossed my arms, and crouched on the ground, anger nearly overwhelming me. "Song Shishing, in this life, Let's see who ends up being the dog that lets others manipulate and slaughter them. In the afternoon, I carried a bucket of soy milk and a few pieces of tofu to a narrow alley and knocked on the door of a house. The one who opened the door was an elderly man with white hair and a youthful face, exuding an air of elegance and refinement. Mr. Lang. I handed him the tofu. I just made this tofu, I'd like to bring some over for you. Mr. Lang was taken aback. Mr. Lang lived alone and ran a tiny private school in this area, where 7 or 8 children came to study every day. I heard he charged very little tuition and lived a very frugal life. In my previous life, everyone thought he was just an unlucky old scholar. But later he became famous throughout the country and was appointed as a high-ranking official. And everyone realized he was a truly extraordinary person. I pleaded with Mr. Lang to take me as his disciple. I had assumed he would reject me for being unqualified and a woman. But to my surprise, he agreed. I could read characters and understand ordinary books. But that was the extent of my knowledge. Deeper scholarship and principles were beyond me. Mr. Lang had thought I merely wanted to learn a few characters. But he was surprised by my dedication. I not only studied diligently and memorized thoroughly but also delved deeply into the subjects and asked probing questions. Qingya, aren't you planning to take the imperial examinations? Mr. Lang asked me with a smile during dinner. I really do want to take them. I replied with a smile. Mr. Lang burst into laughter, stroking his white beard and saying, "In this life, one should not be confined by rigid rules and regulations. This world is so dull precisely because of such constraints." With Mr. Lang's affirmation, my thoughts became clearer. I've lived 2 lifetimes. Yet I'm still trapped by Song Shishing. The pressure and restrictions he imposes on me are like an invisible cage holding me captive. I must break free and change this outcome. Master. I put down my brush and asked Mr. Lang seriously. What is a salt permit? How does one trade salt? Mr. Lang stopped eating and sat down at my desk to explain in detail what a salt permit was and how salt merchants in the Great Zhou dynasty conducted their business. I understand, sir. I will go to the Ministry of Household Affairs tomorrow morning to purchase a salt permit. I clearly remember that before the chaos, the court sold a batch of salt permits. That day, I was at the pharmacy helping Song Shishing prepare medicine. The pharmacy owner told me to wait while he took the money to the Ministry of Household Affairs. At the time, I didn't understand. Now I understand. The world is about to descend into chaos, and the court can no longer contain it. So they sold a batch of salt permits to replenish the national treasury, preparing for grain and fodder to mobilize troops at any moment. You're not just asking out of curiosity? Mr. Lang was startled. You want to become a salt merchant? Sir, opportunity knocks once. I'll buy the salt permits first and figure out the rest later. Mr. Lang was speechless. The next morning, I exchanged the gold Song Shishing gave me for silver coins and waited outside the tea room where the Ministry of Revenue conducted its external affairs. I was the first to arrive, so the clerk who opened the door was surprised to see me. What are you doing here, young lady? I'm here to buy salt permits. Are you crazy? Salt permits aren't like scraps of cloth, you can't just buy them anytime. The clerk waved me away. Go away. Go away. I stood my ground. And when the clerk couldn't shoo me away, he stopped bothering me. After a cup of tea, the clerk held the newly issued official documents and stared at me in disbelief. Who are you? How did you get this information before me? I smiled without answering. How many permits do you want? The official muttered, counting the money I handed him. 50. One permit was worth 200 pounds of salt, equivalent to 1 tael and 8 cash in silver, with 3 taels in taxes. You're a bold young woman, the official said, sizing me up in my ragged clothes before handing me the permits with a strange expression. I took the salt vouchers back to show the master, who couldn't help but laugh and cry. What do you plan to do next? I had no help and couldn't possibly go alone to the salt fields 100 miles away to fetch the salt and sell it. Master, this is easy. 3 days later, the Ministry of Revenue stopped selling salt vouchers, and I sold them for 8 taels of silver. In times of chaos, salt vouchers would become worthless paper, so I had to get rid of them quickly. I cooked a chicken for you. I watched him drink the soup and asked again. Now that it's spring, I want to go to the neighboring villages to collect last season's rice, cotton, and pre-order this autumn's rice. Which government office should I report to? Mr. Lane didn't show any expression of being both amused and exasperated this time. I hired some neighbors and went to the countryside to collect rice and charcoal. 18 days later, news of the rebellion in the northwest reached the capital, and both wealthy families and commoners began hoarding grain and charcoal, causing chaos and unrest. The goods I had stockpiled sold out in just 2 days. During this time, I also met several wealthy merchants, purchased an iron mine, hired soldiers to guard it, and the iron produced brought in a steady stream of wealth. In just half a year, you've become a wealthy merchant. Mr. Lang looked at me with admiration. You are smarter than I thought. And you act decisively. You are someone who can achieve great things. I poured wine for the master. Decisiveness alone is not enough. I still need you as a good helmsman. Mr. Lang tapped my forehead. Before I knew it, summer had arrived. One evening, I went to see the master. But when I opened the door, I froze. In the dilapidated courtyard, Song Shirshing sat out of place. Upon seeing me, he showed no surprise. Smiling, it's been a while. Half a year late, Song Shirshing had finally found Mr. Lang. After sending off her parents, Miss Fong seems unusually busy. In the past few days, she's ordered 8,000 doses of external wound medicine from 20 pharmacies in and around the capital, more than enough for anyone. What does she plan to do? Selling them. I set the dinner for Mr. Lang. Do you want some? I can get you a discount since we're acquaintances. He asked me to send him out. At the door, he smiled faintly and asked, how about setting the wedding date for the end of the year? The 8th day of the 11th month is your birthday. Let's make it that day. My heart skipped a beat. I'm just a commoner, ugly and talentless. You should marry someone who matches your status and beauty. This was different from my previous life. I tried to guess what he was thinking. Don't belittle yourself. Song Shirshing suddenly bent down and whispered in my ear. A woman's beauty and power mean nothing to me. I only like intelligent women. And you are perfect. He gave me an encouraging look and rode off on his horse. I stood at the door, my heart unable to calm down for a long time. That night, I went to find my parents, arranged a new place for them to live, and carefully instructed them not to leave the house. A few days later, rebel armies began to rise in the northwest, Jiangnan, and southwest regions. The timing was exactly the same as in my previous life. But this time, Mr. Lang did not accompany Song Shirshing as his military advisor. Instead, he left the capital with me. In my previous life, after my parents passed away, chaos soon erupted in the capital. Bandits roamed freely, and murders were rampant. The court was too preoccupied with its own affairs to care about the people's lives. Soon, the capital was besieged for the first time, and I fled with my neighbors. From then on, I began a life of constant upheaval. At that time, the most powerful northern faction, which was on par with Song Shirshing, was led by a man named Xiao Mu. He was a former bandit and the last to join the rebellion. Yet within just half a year, he had gathered 80,000 troops and rapidly expanded his forces. A year later, He was nearly on equal footing with Song Shishing and the Prince of Qin. Unfortunately, from the start of his rebellion to his downfall, it was only 7 months. Xiao Mu's death was also legendary. He fell into Song Shishing's trap. His entire army was annihilated, and he was struck by over a dozen arrows. As he lay dying, he fired an arrow that severed Song Shishing's military banner. Later generations praised Xiao Mu for his bravery but criticized him for lacking strategic vision. As a general leading charges into battle, he was a rare talent. But as a leader making decisive judgments, he was too impulsive and reckless. I offered 100 jars of medicinal ointment and stayed at the Langya fortress. When I finally met Xiao Mu, both I and Mr. Lang were stunned. "You're Xiao Mu? How old are you?" I examined the young boy before me. He wasn't very tall, hadn't yet gone through puberty, but he didn't seem weak, just innocent and inexperienced. His father had passed away at the beginning of the month, and he had just taken over the fortress. But it didn't seem like he was managing it very well. Xiao Mu furrowed his brows angrily and said, "I'm 14 years old. 14? That doesn't seem right. I haven't grown yet," Xiao Mu said angrily, splitting the stone block in front of him with a sword to show his strength. I couldn't help but laugh and cry at the same time, wondering if Xiao Mu's lack of strategy in his previous life was because he was too young and inexperienced. "Is the food in the village not tasty? I'll cook for you tonight." Xiao Mu initially looked down on the offer, but once he tasted the food, he ate 3 large bowls and lay on the straw mat, rubbing his stomach. The Langya village was not peaceful. The second and third leaders, taking advantage of his youth and inexperience, caused trouble every day, trying to seize power, and even dared to lead their brothers down the mountain to rob people. Xiao Mu found out and fought with the second leader. He lost, but he didn't cry. Instead, he began to train day and night. You don't have to use a knife to kill someone. At midnight, I handed him a cup of tea. He looked at me in surprise. "What else can you use?" I exchanged a glance with my master and whispered something in his ear. "You're just a woman. How dare you kill someone?" Xiao Mu looked at me. "I'll take care of them for you. But from now on, you have to listen to me." I patted his head. "And you have to call me sister." Xiao Mu was furious. "Just kill them first. Then we'll talk." That night, I buried 1,000 taels of silver under the locust tree in the village. I led the third-in-command's son to dig it up the next day at lunchtime. The tree was in the second-in-command's courtyard, but the money was dug up by the third-in-command's son. The two of them immediately turned on each other and asked Xiao Mu to settle the matter. Xiao Mu waved his hands. "If you want me to decide, we'll split it evenly among everyone." The second and third leaders refused to agree, and the two went off to argue privately over the money. That night, I had Xiao Mu ambush the second leader with arrows. By the early hours of the morning, the brothers loyal to the second and third leaders had killed each other. Many were killed or injured. The second-in-command lost an arm, and the third-in-command was killed. Another day passed, and the third-in-command's widow locked the second-in-command's door, poured sesame oil inside, and set it on fire, burning the entire family to death. Xiao Mu came to find me after putting out the fire, calling me sister in a sweet voice. I stroked his head. "Good boy. I'll make you braised pork knuckle." Xiao Mu's face turned red. Outside, Song Shishing's troops had risen up from Central Plains, dividing into 2 armies, left and right. This time, the leader of the right army was no longer Mr. Lang, but his student from a previous life, surnamed Kuai. Kuai Renfeng was also highly capable, but certainly not as skilled as Mr. Lang. The following year, Song Shishing clashed with the Prince of Qin, engaging in numerous battles, with both sides winning and losing, keeping each other in check. Meanwhile, quietly took over 3 forts with Xiaomu, stationing 30,000 troops there, and secretly recruiting more soldiers. We need more money, Mr. Lang said worriedly. The rations you promised are too high. I sat on the mountain top, pointing to a distant peak. Master, there's a gold mine deep in those mountains. In my previous life, I had heard people mention it. Some desperate men had gone in to steal gold, but none had ever returned. I know. That's Lord Lu's mountain. What do you plan to do? Steal it, I said. Mr. Lang shook his head. If you act, it will attract the court's attention. All our plans will be ruined. Unless. Mr. Lang paused, and I continued his thought. Unless we find someone to take the blame. I don't know how it turned out, but not doing anything definitely wouldn't have resulted in anything. We mobilized 2,000 troops, disguised as Song Shishing's right-hand army. We launched a night raid on Lu and Ho's gold mine. This was my first time seeing a battlefield. In my previous life, following Song Shishing, I spent most of my time in the kitchen. Even though there were wounded soldiers in the camp every day, I had never witnessed a battlefield. At that moment, the flashes of swords and spears, the cries of the wounded, and the screams of horses echoed through the mountains, sending a chill down my spine. I sat on the mountain with Mr. Lang, watching the battle. He asked me, "Are you afraid?" I nodded. "Yes, I am." Mr. Lang nodded slightly and whispered to me, "I am afraid too." After he spoke, we both laughed. Who wouldn't be afraid of something they've never experienced before? But we believed that over time, we would no longer be afraid. That is what growth is all about. We cleared the soldiers guarding the mine but left half the miners behind, sealing the mountain path overnight. The next day, Lu and Ho led his troops to attack the mountain, but after half a month of relentless assault, he was forced to retreat back to the capital. This place was 120 miles from the capital. I thought he had returned to the capital to request reinforcements. But to my surprise, he had kidnapped Song Shishing's sister and demanded that he hand over the gold mine in exchange for her release. 3 days later, Song Shishing arrived at Langya Fortress alone. Upon seeing me and Mr. Lang, he showed no surprise, clearly having known all along that we were here. Mr. Lang refuses to come down the mountain to assist me but instead follows Qingya to become a bandit. Does the master think I am inferior to Qingya? Mr. Lang sipped his tea. Qingya is brave and cunning, combining strength and flexibility. She is indeed superior to General Song. Song Shishing did not grow angry but instead felt a sense of pride. It was as if his own work had been praised. Qingya has earned the master's praise. But she must not grow arrogant. I glanced at him. I am as close to you as a father and daughter. What does this have to do with you? He sat down beside me. Qingya, you stole the gold mine from Lu and Ho and framed me. Now my sister is in his hands. How do you plan to resolve this? She will be killed by you sooner or later. It's just a matter of time. I looked back at him. Compose yourself, General Song. He rebelled without sparing his own sister. Yet now he comes to ask me. Does he expect me to take his place and mourn for him? He stared at me silently, then suddenly smiled. You're really starting to resemble me more and more. 3 days later, Song Shishing killed Lu and Ho and rescued his sister. But she refused to stay by his side. I heard that after the Princess of Liang publicly called him a traitor in front of the army, she rode back to the capital alone. Mr. Lang told me. I felt sorry for the Princess of Liang. If Song Shishing truly wanted to save her life, he should have kept her in the army, where she couldn't have escaped. But she left anyway. And on her first day back in the capital, she was shot down from her horse by an arrow fired by the Prince of Liang. Song Shishing wept bitterly for half a day and swore in the army to avenge his beloved sister. The men in the army were moved by his righteousness, and tens of thousands raised their arms in response, vowing to storm the capital, overthrow the great Zhou dynasty, and usher in a new era of prosperity. In the evening, my men brought me a letter from Song Shishing and the jade pendant I had sold. "Keep the jade pendant for me, and I will take care of your parents. When we meet again one day, it will be the day we marry." My hands trembled, and tears streamed down my face. "Master, he captured my parents. I thought I had hidden my parents well, but I never imagined he would find them." Song Shishing! Song Shishing! Xiao Mu drew his sword and rushed down the mountain, shouting, "I'll go kill Song Shishing." I stopped him. "Sister, this man has no love in his heart. You must not fall for him." Xiao Mu warned me. I knew Song Shishing had no heart, and I would never fall for him. "Don't rush. Stay calm," I reminded him and myself. "He won't harm my parents' lives for now." With iron mines and gold mines in our hands, recruiting soldiers became much easier. In just 3 months, I had gathered an army of 80,000 soldiers, the same number as Xiao Mu had recruited in his previous life. But in a much shorter time, I unfurled the military banner, with the character Feng fluttering in the wind. The 80,000 soldiers were divided into 2 armies, front and rear. The front army was led by me and Xiao Mu, while the rear army was entirely under the command of Mr. Lang. We launched our rebellion from Langya Fortress, 120 miles outside the capital, and swiftly captured 3 prefectures, 6 states, and 18 counties, gaining control of the southeastern region along the Grand Canal. The 3 prefectures served as the capital's eyes and ears. Once they fell, the court would immediately dispatch troops to attack. Xiao Mu had once said, "Even Song Shishing dared not attack these 3 prefectures. If we act now, we will become the court's target." "No problem," I told Xiao Mu. "The emperor is ill and won't survive the month. When the princes vie for the throne, there will be chaos for another month, giving us time to prepare." In my previous life, when the emperor died, Song Shishing's troops celebrated with songs and music for 3 days straight. I and several cooks worked non-stop, not sleeping for days. Also, I whispered, "This place is close to Prince Qin. I have a plan for him." I had no way to deal with Prince Qin, because I had stolen Song Shishing's methods from his previous life. Prince Qin was also a cunning warlord, matching Song Shishing in both military strategy and cunning. However, he had one weakness: he was easily swayed by his emotions. His Achilles heel was his wife. In his previous life, Song Shishing launched a surprise attack on Longtai Mountain, trapping the Qin Wang's wife inside. The Qin Wang lost his composure, and after 3 months of battle, he was utterly defeated and eventually committed suicide at the tomb of the Qin Wang's wife on Longtai Mountain. When I heard this, I envied the Qin Wang's wife greatly. But now I no longer envy her. Her presence has given me an opportunity to act. In October of the same year, the northwest was bitterly cold. Xiao Mu and I surrounded Longtai Mountain in the dead of night. The Princess of Qin was hiding there, on the mountain top. I saw the Princess of Qin. She was even more beautiful than I had imagined. Even a heavenly maiden couldn't compare. "She's not as beautiful as my sister," Xiao Mu said dismissively. He had grown a lot that year, and his clothes needed to be remade every 2 months. Now, when I looked at him, I had to look up at him. "I'm beautiful?" I rolled my eyes at him. "If you complimented my intelligence, I'd be happier." The Princess of Qin handed me a cup of tea with a smile. The world speaks of Feng Qingya as a heroic woman. Today, I see that her reputation is well-deserved. "You flatter me. I just want to live a more human life." I said. The princess of Qin looked pensive. With the world divided into 4 parts today, I still hold the highest hopes for you. The princess of Qin believed the court was on its last legs. Not worth mentioning. And that the prince of Qin was too indecisive, with 7 parts of his heart consumed by family affairs. Originally, Song Shishing had the best chance of winning. But after seeing you today, I feel you will defeat him. I poured her some tea and whispered, if the Qin king surrenders, I will let the 2 of you leave and live as a divine couple. I thought the Qin Wangfei would be grateful and delighted. But she looked down on me. I don't need it. He's just a man. She stroked her luxurious robes. In the final battle, I will assist you. Not for anything else, but because you did what I couldn't. Who says that only men can be kings, ministers, or generals? She laughed as she left. Feng Qingya, you must win. Otherwise, I will have died in vain. After my initial shock, I stood in awe and watched her leave with Xiaomu. The Qin king arrived quickly, leading an army of 60,000. He personally challenged the enemy at the front lines. His clothes disheveled and his appearance disheveled. Just like in my previous life, he had indeed lost his composure. The battle lasted 2 months and 8 days. With 180,000 troops, the Qin king continuously reinforced his forces to confront us. But he ignored the fact that his rear was being overrun by Song Shishing, who had seized the opportunity to capture half of his territory. The final battle took place on the 6th day of the 1st lunar month, which was the Qin king's wife's birthday. She invited the Qin king to meet her at Longtai Mountain, where they drank a cup of poisoned wine together and died under a pine tree covered in thick snow. The Queen of Qin left me a will, instructing me to cremate her remains and scatter them on Longtai Mountain. She made no mention of the King of Qin. I obeyed her, scattering her ashes across every corner of Longtai Mountain. With the King of Qin dead, his troops fell under my command. Master Ling personally reviewed the troops, numbering 20,000 and 4,000. Looking back, only Song Shishing remained. A letter from Song Shishing arrived. Attached was a marriage contract with our birthdates and zodiac signs. Everything is prepared, I await the lady's arrival. He wrote. Xiaomu crumpled the letter into a ball and threw it into the fireplace. Fuming. This scoundrel has no shame. No dignity. Qingya. Tonight I will lead the troops to rescue my parents. Xiaomu said. Who told you to call me Qingya? I tapped his head. Call me sister. Xiaomu shot me a glance. I'm talking to you about important matters. Don't keep harping on trivial details. That night, Mr. Lang rushed back and discussed strategies with us by the lake. The only way to ensure my parents' safety and kill Song Shishing at the same time, I said, gazing at the rippling water, is for me to go to the meeting and marry him. It was the same as in my previous life, yet different. Song Shishing hadn't ascended the throne yet, and I was no longer that bone-gnawing dog. No. I won't agree. Xiaomu frowned. If you go, I'll go instead. Even if I can't escape unscathed, I can at least die with him. You'll only be going to your death. Do you think Song Shishing is a weak scholar who'll let you kill him? I glared at him. Listen to me and the master. Don't act on your own. He kept nagging me. Don't fall for him. And don't show mercy. I covered his mouth. This is a matter of life and death. Do you think I have no sense of proportion? That's not it. He mumbled. That night, we discussed for a long time and devised a thorough plan. In the afternoon, I went alone to find Song Shishing. By the canal, he had set up camp with 60,000 troops, facing our army across the river. At the same place and time, I stood outside his camp once again, waiting to be summoned. In my previous life, I had handed over the jade pendant and waited for half an hour. Before coming here, I washed my face in the river, combed my hair, and stood here with a heart full of excitement and anticipation, waiting for Song Shirshing. At that time, I couldn't deny that I had hoped for the promise he made before he left. But all he gave me was indifference. Now, I stood here once again, and no one knew what the outcome would be. You're here. My thoughts turned, and Song Shirshing appeared before me. He had actually come out to meet me at the camp gates. Where are my parents? I didn't want to say much to him, I just wanted to confirm their safety. They're on their way. He led me forward, lifting the curtain to reveal my parents, who were hugging each other and crying. Song Shirshing was busy arranging for food and drink to be served, then gestured for us to sit down. Though we're on the march, the wedding cannot be rushed. I've already made preparations. Qingya, listen carefully. If there's anything you're not satisfied with, I'll make adjustments. His tone was gentle, as if filled with endless affection, but I knew it was just the surface he wanted to show. He had no heart. As he finished speaking, he called someone in. Seeing the person, I felt a chill run down my spine, and my blood boiled. It was his deputy general, Ma Shichao. Ma Shichao gave me a cold glance. His eyes filled with disdain. I knew this man was arrogant and self-righteous. In my previous life, he knew I had come to the military camp carrying a token to find Song Shirshing. Though Song Shirshing didn't introduce me, anyone with eyes could see there was a connection between us. Yet Ma Shichao still used the excuse of being drunk to humiliate me. He did this because he was certain that Song Shirshing would never kill him for me. He was right. Song Shirshing not only spared his life but also forgave him easily. Before his death, I summoned him to the palace to pour tea for him. He suspected me and switched the positions of the two cups. But he didn't know that I had already planned to die with him. Both cups were poisoned. As the poison took effect, he struggled desperately, overturning the table and cursing me, saying that even if I became empress, I would still be his and Song Shirshing's plaything. The scene shifted, and I heard him casually discussing the wedding arrangements. I interrupted him. Ma Shichao. I raised my chin. I'm about to marry your general. How dare you be so disrespectful to your mistress? Ma Shichao froze, his face instantly filling with anger. I'm not a servant, why should I bow to you? Who do you think you are? I stood up abruptly and splashed a cup of hot tea on his face. I am your master's wife, who do you think I am? You're asking for death. Ma Shichao immediately drew his sword and pointed it at me. I stood across from him, not moving an inch. The atmosphere grew tense, and my parents rushed to protect me on either side. No one spoke in the military tent. After a long while, Song Shirshing stood up and pushed away Ma Shichao's sword. Get out! He ordered Ma Shichao. Ma Shichao turned abruptly to look at him, unable to believe what he was hearing. General, you're making me leave for a lowly woman? She's right. Song Shirshing said solemnly. She's my wife. Disrespecting her is disrespecting me. Ma Shichao looked as though he'd heard the funniest joke in the world. Gritting his teeth, he bowed toward me. Yes. Ma Shichao pays his respects to the lady. With that, he tore open the tent flap and stormed out in a rage. After a moment of silence, Song Shirshing looked at me. Are you satisfied? Qingya, I'm glad you're on my side. I invited him to sit down. Unfortunately, we didn't hear the entire wedding ceremony. We'll have Ma Shichao explain it later. Song Shirshing gave me a meaningful look. Our intentions were clear. I was sowing discord between Ma Shichao and him, while he wanted to see what backup plans I had up my sleeve. In this game, one of us would have to die, and I wasn't afraid of death. Staying in the military camp, I would go for walks whenever I had nothing to do. without avoiding suspicion or being overly formal. Whenever I encountered Ma Shichao, I would give him a mocking glance, and sometimes even scold him. He must have heard what Song Shishing had said, as he endured my insults without retaliating. You've set the rules well. I agreed with Ma Shichao. You're starting to look like a proper servant. Ma Shichao clenched his fists, his neck turning red with anger. But he didn't say a word in response. Have you learned the lesson that when the clever rabbit is dead, the hunting dogs are cooked? I stepped back and looked at him. When I become empress, you'll be the first one I eliminate. He finally couldn't hold back and bit his cheek, replying, You overestimate yourself. Between you and me, the general will kill you first. A few days later, the right army defeated the imperial army in battle, and the left army held a victory banquet. I accompanied Song Shishing to sit at the head of the table and celebrated with them. To you, Song Shishing clinked glasses with me. When we marry, it will be even more lively than this. I sighed. General, why not just proclaim yourself emperor? Then I could become empress directly. He raised an eyebrow. That way, when you ascend the throne, you won't have to bestow me with the title of concubine or consort, which would be so humiliating. I thought he would refuse. But to my surprise, he took my hand and whispered softly, All right. I'll do as you wish. I drank a few more cups and stood up to go to the washroom. Halfway there, a hand suddenly grabbed my wrist and dragged me into the military tent. Ma Shichao pushed me onto the bed. Just like in my previous life, he immediately began tearing my clothes off. The fear from my previous life and the terror of the present moment overwhelmed me. I said, Ma Shichao, you'd better think this through before you act. You slut. Ma Shichao tore open my collar. I know exactly what you're doing. You've been provoking me every day just to drive a wedge between me and the general. The general is no fool, he can see right through your schemes. Tonight I will take you by force and see if the general dares to kill me. I looked at him. You're mistaken. I provoked you on the general's orders. You're arrogant and defiant, disobeying military discipline and disregarding others. He's wanted you dead for a long time. The proverb when the birds have been caught, the good bough is hidden, when the rabbits have been killed. The hunting dogs are cooked, haven't you heard of it? Ma Shichao paused. I am his betrothed wife. Husband and wife are of one heart. He is the emperor, and I am the empress. You are an outsider, both now and in the future. Ma Shichao slapped me twice, accusing me of lying. Let's make a bet. Will he kill you when he comes? Ma Shichao's hands, which were braced against my sides, began to tremble. After a long while, he gritted his teeth and said, Let's bet. I'm not afraid of a woman like you. All right. I whispered. If I lose, and he shows any intent to kill you, you must rebel. Just take me and my family of 3 away, and I will hand over the command of 20,000 troops to you afterward. He froze, as if suddenly remembering that I still held the command of 20,000 troops. He accepted the bet. After all, from the moment he tore open my collar, he had no way out. As for me, no matter the outcome, I wouldn't lose. If Song Shishing easily forgave Ma Shichao, I would stay and continue with the plan. If Song Shishing killed Ma Shichao, that would be even better. Ma Shichao's influence in his army was second only to his own, and he couldn't afford the consequences. Just then, Song Shishing pushed aside the curtain and entered. I clutched the torn collar of my robe and hid behind him, sobbing softly. Ma Shichao flexed his muscles, pulling up his trousers. To my surprise, Song Shishing hesitated not a moment before placing his sword against Ma Shichao's neck. This outcome even surprised me. It was different from my previous life. I told you not to touch my men, Song Shishing said. enunciating each word clearly. If you want to die, I'll grant you your wish. Ma Shichao's face was filled with shock. A general who had always been obsessed with power was now willing to cut off his own left arm and right arm for a woman. He had lost his bet. He let out a loud shout, drew his sword to counterattack Song Shishing, and rushed over to grab me. As they exchanged blows, the soldiers in the camp also began to stir. I stood at the door, waiting for the outcome. A quarter of an hour later, Ma Shichao was dead, his eyes wide open, staring straight at Song Shishing. Song Shishing dropped his sword, grabbed me, and dragged me to his military tent. How about it? Song Shishing asked me, suppressing his anger. It was unexpected that the general would kill him. I straightened my clothes. I'm satisfied. He gripped my arm and repeated the question. I'm asking you, did he do anything to you? I looked into his eyes, trying to read his expression. His eyes were filled with rage, an emotion I had never seen before and couldn't decipher. This was the first time I had ever seen Song Shishing lose his composure. I'm fine. I pushed his hand away. My body is fine. And my mood is even better. He said nothing more, swept aside the curtain, and left. A moment later, my mother rushed in. The general sent me to take care of you. Did Ma Shichao bully you? I shook my head. The death of Ma Shichao had a greater impact than I had anticipated. He had once betrayed the court, leading 5,000 troops to join Song Shishing's ranks. Now that he was dead, his men had gathered, intent on killing me to avenge him. I didn't understand why Song Shishing was still waiting. Why didn't he kill me? I recalled the words Mr. Lang had said before he left. A man as arrogant as Song Shishing sees women as nothing more than tools to be controlled. No matter how stubborn or capable I am still just a woman. As long as he marries me, the two armies will unite, and the world will still be his, and only his. In the end, he still believes that everything is within his calculations and control. I am his, so everything I have is his. On the day of the wedding, the military camp was adorned with red silk. I told my parents, don't worry about my life or death. Just leave. There will be someone to help you once you're out. My parents nodded repeatedly, turning back 3 times as they walked away. Dressed in red, I paraded through the camp, showing off my power. Ma Shichao's men saw me and grew restless, cursing and muttering under their breath, eager to tear me apart and eat my flesh. In the warm, red-lit tent, Song Shishing entered, also dressed in red. Mr. Lang didn't come. That's truly a pity. When you ascend the throne one day, you can invite him to drink then. That's fine, he said. I poured him some wine, but he hesitated, his gaze flickering between the 2 cups. I understood and swapped the cups, then thought better of it and poured both out. General, pour the wine yourself. This way, it won't be poisoned. All right, he said. He went out to fetch a jar of wine, poured 2 cups for me and himself, and handed me the cup, his gaze lingering on me. I thought of my previous life when he and I got married. There was no wedding ceremony, no drinking of the cup of wine. He took off his red robe, left a word of gratitude, and left on his own. In this life, he has really changed a lot. He is more particular now. When we drank the cup of wine, he whispered in my ear, "Your parents were so happy that they got drunk and ran around the camp. They even came back after leaving the camp." My hand trembled, and wine spilled onto his shoulder. "Don't worry. I've had someone take care of your parents. Let's rest early tonight." I steadied myself on the table to keep from falling. "I have a question for you." I forced myself to stay calm. "Are you so confident that marrying me will give you my troops?" Song Shishing shook his head. Marrying you is just about marrying you. It has nothing to do with your troops. Song Shirshing tidied the stray strands of hair at my temple. What I want. Nothing can escape my grasp. I smiled lightly at him. This time, it might not be the same. His gaze faltered slightly, and his movements grew slower. Is it the candle? He raised his hand to extinguish the candle. But I shook my head. It's useless. You've already been poisoned. Thankfully. He had been considerate enough to set up a pair of dragon and phoenix candles. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had the chance to poison him. Song Shirshing collapsed onto the ground, facing me across the table. So, you came here with no intention of leaving alive? I turned my head to look at him. Song Shirshing, do you believe in past lives? If there is a past life, you won't escape my grasp. Song Shirshing said confidently. It was true. From the day I met him, I had been trapped in the cage he had set for me. Until death. Not in this life. I told him. Outside the military tent, flames shot into the sky, and the sound of battle filled the air. Under Song Shirshing's gaze, I took the tea and drank the antidote. Then smiled at him. My men are coming. Song Shirshing sneered. You dare not kill me. He truly didn't believe I would dare to kill him. Just as he had always been confident that I couldn't escape his grasp. But I dared. That night, Ma Shichao's troops rebelled and broke ranks with Song Shirshing. Xiao Mu divided his troops into 6 routes and led them to attack. With no leader, the army was in chaos, and Song Shirshing was utterly defeated. A month later, the right army led by Qiring Feng retreated step by step, withdrawing to the northwest, then beyond the pass, where they were pursued by Xiao Mu for 100 miles. And his head was taken. Half a year later, on the same day that Song Shirshing besieged the capital in my previous life, I led my troops to surround the capital. On the same day that Song Shirshing breached the city walls, I breached the capital. On the same day that Song Shirshing killed the new emperor and stood in the Qinquan Hall to address the ministers, I donned new clothes, arranged my hair, and sat high on the throne. They knelt and shouted, "Welcome the new ruler." Listen. I lifted the curtain and asked Song Shirshing, who was seated behind me. They are calling me the new ruler, not the empress. If looks could kill, he would have killed me countless times. Later, I became a cook in the army, which gave me the opportunity to cook for him and bring him midnight snacks. Xian Song Shirshing closed his eyes in agony. 6 days later, I ascended the throne and proclaimed the state name Yan, the same as the state name of Song Shirshing from my previous life. But the difference was that this time I was the ruler, and he was a prisoner. Amidst the sounds of music, fireworks, and whips, I sat by the bed, studying Song Shirshing. After 6 days of fasting, he suddenly opened his eyes and looked at me. For a moment, his gaze was dazed. Feng Qingya, you're not dead? He shouted my name in shock. After shouting, he furrowed his brows in pain, his gaze turning from sharp to endless agony. Are you satisfied now? Not satisfied, but satisfied. I told him. Very satisfied. Song Shirshing, in this world, nothing is certain to remain unchanged. For instance, you are strong, and I am weak. For instance, I love you. The door was pushed open, and Xiao Mu walked in, taking my hand and leading me out. Let's go watch the fireworks. What's the point of staying here? All right. Let's watch the fireworks. Why keep him alive? Let me kill him. Today is a good day. Kill him tomorrow. After killing him, bury him at my parents' grave. At that moment, a firework lit up the night. Brilliant and dazzling,